I paint houses, inside and out, in Billings, Montana. I just finished 8 hours painting a house off Maple Street. Stop at the Painters Union Hall. And Bob tells us that last night some assholes spray painted a bunch of hate-filled graffiti on the house of Eve Running Fox, who happens to be an Indian woman. They painted "Die Indian" and the Nazi symbol on the outside of her house. Look, I'm no liberal, but it pissed me off. Some innocent woman who happens to be an Indian lives with her kids in Billings, Montana. She wakes up one morning and finds this mean-spirited filth on the outside of her house. So Bob says, "Will you guys go over to her house and paint it up right?" So me and 29 guys who, just like me, just finished our regular shifts, we pile into our vans like a convoy, and we do what we do. We show up at her house, we set up our ladders, we scrape, we prime, and we paint. When it looks good, we have a beer, then maybe another. Look, I'm just doing what's right. If some skinhead is going to slink around in the night painting hate on this innocent woman's house while she and her children are asleep inside, then I'm going to show up while they're awake and paint over it. And that's exactly what me and my buddies did. Look, the nutcases who spray painted this innocent woman's house want to clean up the Northwest. You know what it means to clean up? They want to make the Northwest into a place where only white people live. And do you know what white people means? Indians aren't white. Black people and Hispanics aren't white. Jews aren't white. Hell, I'm not sure whether they consider Catholics white. These people are crazy, and they're dangerous. They put on their Nazi uniforms, their Klan hoods, they cover themselves in tattoos. They get their assault weapons and explosives and baseball bats, and they kill people. They scare me. Enough talking. Time for another beer.
Maybe you don't know this, but non-whites, mud people, they have no soul. And because they have no soul, they have no place in the afterlife, so they are not going to heaven or hell after they die. Do you understand what this means? There are no consequences to them for how they conduct themselves on earth. And Jews are a special case. Jews are a race of devils born from the foul bonding of Eve and Satan. Jews are Satan's agents. He placed them on earth to do his bidding. This is the truth. It is my duty to stop their crimes, to stop these infidels, these mud people. It is my sacred crusade. My Aryan brothers and sisters believe this too. We are protecting ourselves to survive the coming apocalypse, and to survive, we need to clean the Northwest of what you call the United States of America, of every single mud person, to create an Aryan nation where we can survive and do God's bidding. The Aryan Congress declared the states of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana to be our white homeland. So we gave a message to Eve Running Fox. We gave her a warning. Get you and your mud children out of Billings. We didn't burn her house down. We didn't bomb it. We didn't shoot her. We didn't lynch her. We gave her a warning. Get out, Indian. Get out of Montana. Get the fuck out.
My kids and I wake up this morning, and when we go outside and wait for the school bus, we see the words "Die Indian" painted on the wall of our little house. There's a swastika painted on the house. When we went to bed last night, this was not on the walls. During the night, somebody was just on the other side of a thin wall, when me and my kids were asleep and painted this on our home. What do my kids know? They don't know what a swastika is or what it means. But my older one can read. And his sister asks him, what does it say? And he tells her that it says Die Indian. They know they're Native Americans, members of the proud Apsaluke, what the whites call the Crow tribe, and that some people call us Indians. And now they know that somebody wants them to die. They're just little kids. What do they understand? I can tell you that they feel fear. Now they don't feel safe in their own home. That's because they were not safe in their home last night. Their mother couldn't protect them from this. This happened when we were asleep inside our house. It was just a thin wall between me and my kids and whoever painted this. Maybe it makes my kids strong. I hope so. I hope so. But it's certainly not what I want my kids to live with. We know in our bones, in our genes, and in our souls that Native Americans are not safe here. Most of our people were killed. A few of us survived, but we're not safe. We're not safe. But that is not the end of the story. Here's what happened today. 30 union painters show up at my house and they painted. They just showed up and painted over the hate. And my kids see these men, most of them were white men. They did their jobs. I tried to thank them. One of them said to me, "We're sorry this happened to you, ma'am. We're just doing what's right. No need to thank us." And he meant it. He didn't need to be thanked. I have gratitude in my heart for these men who are just doing what's right. But I'm still scared. My kids are still scared. I don't know if it's helpful, but the feeling is right here. We know we're a target. We know that they know where we live. If they spray painted our house once, they can do it again. If they murdered our brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers, grandmothers and grandfathers, they can murder us. But at the same time, I know that these 30 men are awake too, with their paintbrushes and rollers and scrapers and ladders, and they'll make it right. I'm not alone. I've got 30 painting brothers watching my back.
When I came home last night, my 5-year-old son Isaac and our 2-year-old daughter Rachel are not in their beds or bedrooms. I find them in sleeping bags under our bed. They're quiet. I walk in the bedroom, they stick their heads out from under the bed. It's almost as if they're playing, but something just doesn't feel right. "What are you doing?" I ask them. Isaac says, "Dad said we're playing camping." There's something in his voice that doesn't sound like he's convinced about the playing part. I say, "Well, Daddy and I will be in soon and we'll camp with you." I get down on my knees, stick my head under the bed, and kiss them and pull the sleeping bag under their chin. I turn off the light and I look for Brian. My husband is an emergency room doctor. His job is to take care of the people who've been hit by cars, shot by guns, cut by glass and knives. He takes people's lives in his hands and he tries his darndest to help them. And here's my heroic husband sitting on Isaac's bed and he is crying. There's broken glass and cold air pouring through the room, through a jagged hole in the window. There's broken glass and a brick on top of my son's bed, and my husband is crying. He says, "I cannot protect my child. Thank God he wasn't in the room when they threw the brick." And then I see the paper menorah we placed in Isaac's window is still there. The bastard who threw this brick might have had a strong arm, but his aim sucks. I start to put the pieces of the story together, and I start to get cold. It's not the cold air coming through the broken window. It's fear. Stone cold fear. I'm fourth generations Billing, Montana. My family was Lutheran. I was baptized and confirmed. As a teenager, my summer job was teaching at a Bible camp. I never thought about it when I was growing up here, how it felt to be Lutheran growing up in Billings. And I never thought how it felt to be white growing up in Billings. And then I met Brian. He was new in town. He was the emergency room doctor. His last name was Schnitzer. Brian was cute and funny and smart and kind. He was the doctor because he wanted to help others. And he was an emergency room doctor because that was the place where people needed his help the most. After we had 2 dates, and we both recognized something special was going on between us, he said, "Tammy, I need to confess something to you." And I think, what could this be? He's talking in a voice that tells me this is not a joke. Is he gay? Does he have AIDS? Is he an alcoholic? Brian takes my hand in his, looks me in the eyes, and lowers his gaze to the floor. I'm thinking this is bad. I say, "What is it, Brian? Tell me." He takes a breath and then says in a low voice, "I'm Jewish." I'm so surprised and suddenly relieved. "You're Jewish?" The way you said, "Tammy, I need to confess," I thought something was bad. "You're Jewish. So what?" Brian looks at me with the most surprised expression. "I thought it would be a problem," he says. "Well, it's not," I tell him. And it's so much not a problem that we get married and I convert to Judaism. The music, the traditions, the feel of it spoke to me in a way that I wanted to be a part of it. And our children, Isaac and Rachel, are raised as Jews, raised to be proud Jews, by their father who was born into a Jewish family and their mother who was born into a Lutheran family and became a Jew. A few weeks ago, 19 headstones in the small Jewish cemetery in Billings were turned over. The Catholic cemetery is right next to the Jewish one. There's just a 4-foot-tall chain-link fence separating the two cemeteries. Not one headstone at the Catholic cemetery was touched. It was pretty darn clear that this was a hate crime directed at the Jews, but the congregation did not want to make waves, didn't want to draw attention to this incident, or us. So the headstone desecrations were called vandalism. Vandalism? How could it be vandalism when it was the headstones at the Jewish cemetery that were knocked down and none were touched at the Catholic cemetery? And then the next week, outside our synagogue, there's a flyer that suddenly appears on the back of a stop sign. The flyer says, "Nuke Israel." Someone puts up a "Nuke Israel" sign right next to the synagogue. We know there are skinheads and neo-Nazis out there. They have a plan, but it's directed at graves and glued to stop signs. It was personal, but not that personal. Until tonight. Tonight, someone throws this brick through Isaac's window, through my 5-year-old son's window. This brick that lands with broken glass on my 5-year-old son's bed. Now it's very personal. And for the first time in my life, I feel very cold. I've been cold before, but this is a different kind of cold. Now I understand Brian's confession. He wasn't ashamed. He was warning me. I was never scared to be Lutheran. I was never scared to be white. But now I understand. There are people out there in the dark, throwing bricks through the window of my 5-year-old son's room. Because my son is a Jew. Because I am a Jew. Brian calls the police. An officer comes to our house. We tell him what happened. He checks the other rooms. He's very professional. Looks at the broken window. Looks at the brick. He takes notes and calls headquarters and requests for another officer to cruise the neighborhood. The second officer comes to our home and reports that he hasn't seen anyone or anything suspicious, but that they'll keep an eye on the block tonight. They're about to leave, and the first officer turns to me and Brian, and he says, "It might be better if you took the menorah down." I know he's doing his job. He's telling us what he thinks will make it safe for us. I am scared. And I've got chutzpah. You don't have to be born Jewish or even be Jewish to have chutzpah. Chutzpah is facing your fear and doing what's right. We know that whoever threw this brick through our son's window is still out there. Yes, I'm scared. And yes, I've got chutzpah. So first thing tomorrow morning, I'm going to call Gary Svi, an editor at the Billings Gazette, and get this story in the newspaper. And the menorah stays in the window.
Tammy Schnitzer calls me on the phone. She says that last night, a brick was thrown through Isaac's window where a menorah was displayed. I assigned a reporter and photographer to get the story. The next morning, we're having our regular editorial meeting. I'm thinking, this is not an isolated incident. We've had racist graffiti spray painted on the home of a Native American. We've had headstones overturned in a Jewish cemetery and a sign reading "Nuke Israel" posted near a synagogue. Now, we've had a brick thrown through the window of a Jewish family. What is the role of the newspaper, my newspaper, in this? What is my job as an editor of this local newspaper? We've got a town that's scared, and with good reason. The newspaper is here to objectively report the news, but we've also got a responsibility to be a voice of the community. So we're talking at the editorial meeting about what can we do? What should we do? What is the right thing to do? You know how ideas emerge? A piece here, a piece there. Someone says something that stimulates a thought into another. It's an organic process that takes a little time. It was no lightning strike of an idea, but after a while, we think about printing a full-page menorah in the paper and inviting the folks of Billings to put them in their windows. We added a text and printed it. On December 2nd, 1993, someone twisted by hate threw a brick through the window of the home of one of our neighbors, a Jewish family who chose to celebrate the holiday season by displaying a symbol of faith, a menorah, for all to see. Today, members of religious faiths throughout Billings are joining together to ask residents to display the menorah as a symbol of something else, our determination to live together in harmony, and our dedication to the principle of religious liberty embodied in the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. We urge all citizens to share in this message by displaying this menorah in the door or the window from now until Christmas. Let all the world know that the irrational hatred of a few cannot destroy what all of us in Billings and in America have worked so hard together to build. Within a few days, there were menorahs in 5,000 homes in Billings, Montana. Billings has a population of 81,000 people. 100 of them are Jews. You do the math. It's not just numbers. It was individual human beings who happened to live in Billings, Montana, who placed a menorah in the windows of their homes, businesses, schools, and churches. Each one made a decision to place a Jewish symbol in their window. It wasn't just 5,000 anonymous homes that put menorahs in their windows. It was individual human beings. Putting up menorahs was not without risk. Rocks were thrown through the windows of 6 homes of non-Jewish families who displayed menorahs. The windows of homes of 2 other Christian families who displayed menorahs were shot by air rifles. Billings Central Catholic High School posted a sign outside of their building. It read, "Happy Hanukkah to our Jewish friends." A brick and 2 rounds of gunfire were shot at the school. Some folks who had menorahs in their windows got telephone calls. The caller said, "Go take a look at your car, Jew lover." They went outside and found the windows of their cars broken by rocks. And an arrow killed a cat that belonged to a family who displayed a menorah.
I went hunting yesterday for animals of the Jew lovers I'm driving around town and see this house with the Jew candle picture in the window. And I see this cat in the yard. It's almost dark, but the cat is light colored. It's just sitting there, so I quick stop, pull out my hunting bow. I'm wearing dark colored clothes. It takes just a few seconds to get a clear line of fire. I've filed the tip of the arrow so it's razor sharp. I place the arrow on the string. I draw the string back to my right cheek and extend the bow forward with my left arm. The string rests silently on my right cheek. The cat fills my vision. A moment of stillness, and I release the string. The arrow launches off the bow. In an instant, it's deep inside the Jew lover's cat. And I'm gone. Not a trace of me, just a dead Jew lover's cat. I've got plenty of other arrows.
It was dangerous to place a menorah in the window. And very quickly, people approached me, Wayne Inman, Billings, Montana, Chief of Police. People were scared. They asked me, is it dangerous to put up menorahs? Well, I'm the Chief of Police. It's my job to protect people and property. My job is about public safety. So when people I'm supposed to protect ask me if a certain activity is dangerous, well, my answer carries weight. It carries responsibility. That's my job. And I thought about what is the right answer. I say to them, yes, it is dangerous to put a menorah in your window. But I'll tell you, I think it's more dangerous not to put a menorah in your window. If we go quietly, then the haters will have free rein. Maybe some innocent people are going to be hurt. But the truth is, innocent people have already been hurt. And I believe if we don't hang menorahs in our windows, more innocent people will be hurt than if we crawl into our little cocoons and crawl away and die. To tell you the truth, I haven't been sleeping very well. I told people to do something that really is quite dangerous. I can live with that. Sometimes you've got to take the risk if it means doing the right thing. On the evening of November 12, 1988, I was a rookie police officer in Portland, Oregon. At that point, 3 skinheads had beaten a 28-year-old Ethiopian student and father named Mugalata Sarau. They beat him to death with a baseball bat. The skinheads, Ken Misk, who goes by the name Death and Batman, Kyle Brewster, and Steven Strasser. They're members of the White Aryan Resistance. White Aryan Resistance, the acronym spells war. And they meant it. Well, they're driving around Portland, Oregon with their girlfriends when they confronted and savagely assaulted Mugaleta. The 3 of them and their girlfriends, well, they left Mugaleta in a pool of his own blood. He died shortly thereafter. I was a precinct captain in the district where Mugaleta was murdered. During the trial, Misk was asked why they had killed Mugaleta. Misk answered, because of his race. Because of his race. Brewster and Strasser were convicted of manslaughter and assault. Misk was found guilty of first-degree murder. Misk played in heavy metal bands and he fancied himself to be quite a poet. This is an example of one of his poems called Senseless Violence. Victims all around me, I feel nothing but hate. Bashing in their brains is my only trade. Senseless violence is the only thing I know. Piles of corpses, never ending. Watch them grow. Kill my victims for pleasure and for fun. Beat them over the head. Shoot them with my gun. Line them up against the wall. Shoot them watch them die. I love to hear the agony. They vomit, scream, and die. These cowards beat Muguletta with a baseball bat. They punched him, and when he's helpless on the ground, they repeatedly kicked him with their steel-toed boots. Muguletta was a man with a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, his wife, and his own child. When the racists say they're going to clean up the Northwest, they mean business. And these cowards, they beat an innocent man to death. He came to the United States to study engineering, and what did he get? I wish I was there when Misk, Brewster, and Strasser approached Muguletta. I would have done my job and I would have stopped them. But I wasn't there then. Muguletta's murder took place on my watch in Portland. I'll be damned if I let that happen again here in Billings, Montana. And here and now in Billings, these hate-crazed fools, well, they spray paint their filth on the home of Eve Running Fox. And I'm here in Billings when they throw a brick through the window of 5-year-old Isaac Schnitzer. Muguletta was beaten to death in my precinct on my watch. I'm not going to let that happen again.
Our brothers in Portland showed the world that if our gentler warnings are ignored, we will take harsher methods to show we mean business. There is a race war against white people, but my white brothers and sisters will stand in solidarity with white communities around the world. The hatred for our children is growing and is being fueled every single day. We will witness to others that there is a better way than a war-torn, socialist New World Order. The Christian way, law and order, love of family, love of nation. These are the principles of Western Christian civilization. There is a war to destroy these things, and we are at war with those destroyers of what is pure, and they are at war with us. So after we warn the Indians, and after we warn the Jews, it's time to warn the blacks. On Sunday morning, we go to the so-called Church of the Mud People. They call their church the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Wayman Chapel, and their mud preacher, Reverend Freeman.
My dear brothers and sisters, I'm here today to talk to you about size. Now, in our culture, size is a big thing. But I'm here today to talk to you about the beauty of small. Some people think that a church has to be a mega church. But I'm here today to say to you, brothers and sisters, that a small church, a church like our own Wayman Chapel, with our small, humble building with 5 rows of simple padded pews and our simple preacher, me, this church has a pure heart. And if it's pure, it doesn't matter how big it is. As I say these last words, 3 skinheads walk in the door of my church. They wear heavy black boots. They have a swastika tattooed on their forearms. They stand in a line, cross their arms, and they sneer. I see them. My congregation sees them. I take a breath. And then I continue to preach. Our church is a place of caring for those who are weak, for those who are ill, for those who are hungry, for those who are scared, and for those who are filled with hatred. Yes, we have a heart for all of those in need. We will give you a blanket if you're cold. We will give you a hearty soup if you're hungry. We will visit you in your hospital bed. And yes, we will love you even if you come to us in hate. We do not need a mega church. In fact, we do not even need our small building with our simple pews and this simple preacher. We usually don't see white people here at Wayman Chapel. Certainly not three skinheads. I look for it, but I cannot find a trace of heart in these angry young white men. My church is a small building, so these angry white men, these men filled with hate, take up a lot of space. Their silence takes up a lot of space. I continue my sermon. Brothers and sisters, recall from the book of Samuel, the small boy who faced a giant. That small boy asked God for help. That small boy was small in size, and that giant was a giant in size. But that size doesn't matter, even if that evil was large, because righteousness does not need a big man. Righteousness does not need a big gun. In fact, that small boy whose name was David only needed a small stone and a means to deliver it. A humble, small stone, propelled by the power of God, brought down Goliath, and that small boy David was left standing. He was standing to do God's will. He was standing to do God's work, to feed the hungry, to comfort the sick, to warm our brothers and sisters who are cold. No, I do not need a mega church. I only need God's will and God's love. My congregants are looking at me, but glance nervously over their shoulders at the skinheads. The skinheads stare straight ahead. My job is to lead my congregation, and I'll be damned if I don't do my job. It is Sunday service, and we will praise God. We will thank God. We will dedicate our lives to the service of the gospel. I will not allow these bullies to bully me or my congregation or my Sunday service. I hear people ask, who am I? Why am I here? And here is the answer. You're a child of God. You're on this earth to do God's bidding, to do good. And when the odds are stacked against you, when the giant is huge and you feel so small, remember this: God has your back. God gave that little boy David the small stone to slay the giant Goliath. God has your back. God has your back. So look evil in the eye. Stand up. Stand up to evil just as David stood up to Goliath. If that little boy can do that, if that little boy can defeat evil, so can you, so can I. Yes, my brothers and sisters, yes, we will. One of the skinheads nods to the other two, and they march out of the door of the church with their shaved heads and cold, hard eyes. They look like robots. The expression cold-blooded comes to mind. It is as if they are another species, not human beings. Yet I remind myself they are as much human as I am a human being. I am a preacher. I preach the gospel. And on that Sunday morning service, God tested me. God tested my congregation. God watched, and we passed the test. We passed God's test. Word gets out quickly what happened on Sunday morning. We don't know if the skinheads will ever come back. We don't know if they will spray paint our church like they did the home of Eve Running Fox. We don't know if they'll throw bricks through our windows like they did the homes of the snitches. We don't know if they'll follow us home and what they might try to do to us with no witnesses present. We don't know if they'll firebomb our homes or our church, as they have done so many black churches and black homes in the South. These people have lynching and genocide in their history. I'm an old man. I've been through a lot. God will be calling me to him pretty soon. When he calls, I will willingly answer his call. I will not fear that call. But I'm not going to lie. When those skinheads came into my church, I was scared. I was scared. And I was scared for me, but not just for me. I was scared for my congregation. I was frightened that this country that came into being as an act of genocide against its native people, that came into being on the bloodied backs of African slaves, that proclaimed itself to the world as a place of freedom, justice, and equality. A country that has made genuine, painful strides towards those lofty goals. I was afraid that all this potential for human dignity might be derailed by hate mongers. And do you know who showed up the next Sunday? There were new people showing up for Sunday service. My congregation grew a lot. There were a lot of white people sitting in the pews, only they weren't skinheads. Oh, sure, some of them were bald, but most of them had hair. They were adults and children. They had warmth in their eyes. I didn't have to look hard to see they had warmth in their hearts. Word had spread that the skinheads tried to intimidate the small African Methodist Episcopal Zion Wayman Chapel in Billings, Montana. And good people who happened to be white. They came out to bear witness with us, to be our brothers and sisters in the community. There is righteousness, there is good, there is courage. My old congregation showed up and my new congregation showed up. And we had a wonderful Sunday service. And I don't know what those skinheads were up to, but they didn't come back to my church. There was no room for them. You see, all the seats were taken. Praise God.
We know that when somebody paints Die Indian on the home of Eve Running Fox, when somebody throws a brick through Isaac Schnitzer's window, when skinheads show up at the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Wayman Chapel, we know they're capable of killing people. So we paint Eve's house. We put menorahs in our windows, and we go to Reverend Freeman's church. There's a story going around Billings today. It's a story about what happened in Denmark during World War II. Throughout Nazi-occupied Europe, which was most of Europe, most Christians passively stood by or actively helped the Nazis round up their Jewish neighbors. But it was different in Denmark. There were 8,000 Jews in Denmark when the Nazis invaded. In the end, the Danes saved 7,898 of their Jewish neighbors. 99% of Denmark's Jews survived. In the rest of occupied Europe, 2/3 of the Jews died at the hands of the Nazis. What happened in Denmark is that Christian Danes risked their lives to save their neighbors who happen to be Jews. Something different happened in Denmark. What was that? The story goes that the king of Denmark, whose name, by the way, was Christian, makes a public statement. We are all Danes. And the story goes that King Christian puts on the Jewish star, the 6-pointed yellow star, the Star of David, that the Nazis ordered that all Jews had to wear so that they could be singled out. King Christian puts on a Jewish star. Maybe the king took the lead from the decency and goodwill of his people. Maybe they took the lead from him. In fact, the story about King Christian putting on the Star of David is actually a myth. I don't really care about the story. I care about results. And the results were that in the middle of the murder of millions of innocent people, people who were singled out because of their religion, almost every one of the targeted individuals survived. And in our own way, in 1993, many people in Billings, Montana, like many people in Denmark during World War II, put ourselves in harm's way to do the right thing. Well, that's more talking than I've done for quite a long time. Guess it's time for another beer.